Warning, this episode may contain content that is not suitable for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
You can have a virus where people feel well enough while they're infectious that they get on a plane or they go to a market. The source of the virus could be a natural epidemic like Ebola, or it could be bioterrorism. We have the benefits of all the science and technology that we talk about here. We've got cell phones to get information from the public and get information out to them. We have satellite maps where we can see where people are and where they're moving.
So technology is really at the point where if you want to have a mark of the beast and you want to make sure you track people, right? The mark of the beast says, the Bible says, when you receive the mark, or if you don't receive the mark, you will be killed. How do they know where you are? Welcome back to LED Live. In today's episode, we are talking about Mpox, COVID, the CDC, Freemasons, and Jesuits. I don't think you ever considered all of those being combined in one sentence, but we're going to discuss all of them today and what the connection is. So, Mpox is kind of a big thing right now. Oof. This is the result of what happens to these people. It's kind of a big thing in Africa. Now, it's been around for a couple of years. And in 2022, it was an uprise, went down again, and now it's back out again. And in fact, The Guardian even mentions that it has been declared a global health emergency by the World Health Organization, which is interesting. You know, we have this with too, and it started in one country, and all of a sudden it starts spreading. And the reason why this is interesting is because this is a new strain that I guess is more contagious, infectious, and that's why it's on the uprise again.
Is it like chickenpox, like a form of that?
Yeah, it is. Yes. Okay. So check this out. USA Today updates on Mpox outbreak, where it's been detected and what to do if you get it. It is spreading to other countries now, such as where it says Sweden and Thailand. And so what's interesting is they're saying, no, this is not the new, this is not something like that again. However, at the end of this article here, it says, so while Hans Klug, the WHO regional director for Europe, rejected the notion that Mpox might follow this deadly path, he also warned we can and must tackle Mpox together across regions and continents. So again, we don't know if this is going to be the next new thing, but it's interesting, and we go into this later on, the Bible does talk about in Matthew 24, how in the last days, which I believe we're living in, there will be more pestilences, diseases, and those are the signs of Christ's second coming. So, remember good old Rena, our friend that came around, what year? 2020? Mm-hmm. Yep. And, you know, lots and lots of people have...
Our friend. I thought you were like somebody we had on our show. No.
I wouldn't call it a friend.
Yeah. Our enemy. Rona came around 2020, right? And it was a major pandemic all around the world. And we all know about it. We all went through it. It's interesting how it's 2024 and it feels so far away. But this is only a few years ago. 2 years ago, we were still in this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who was in charge of fighting this disease in the United States?
Mr. Ouchie Fauci.
So Mr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Fauci was actually considered a Roman Catholic Jesuit. Did you guys know about that? Mm-hmm. So here it says at Britannica, from Britannica, it says, at Regis High School, Fauci was taught in the Jesuit tradition and its, quote, to be meant for others, unquote, philosophy had a lasting impact on him. He later attended the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, where he took a pre-med class, and he also attended the Jesuit school, Georgetown University. So it's interesting that his entire upbringing has actually been Jesuit. What do you guys know about the Jesuits? Why does this matter that this particular individual who was in charge of the operations of fighting the coronavirus was actually a Jesuit?
Jesuits were the military branch of the Catholic Church, right? Mm-hmm. So they would kind of carry out the dirty work of the church when in the beginning of its onset. And then that way the church wasn't necessarily blamed for whatever happened. It was this kind of secret group over here. I think they're very much connected still as well. Mm-hmm. And so I find this not surprising that these people that are in these leadership roles have connections like this.
They're still very powerful.
Very powerful.
They were created what back in, the Dark Ages, 1500s or earlier even.
Mm-hmm. And when you read their oaths, you can go and Google a Jesuit oath. I mean, it's pretty straight. Like, no matter what the cost is, we're going to maintain this thing, even if we have to sacrifice babies. And I mean, there's some really random,
It's pretty hardcore
that, I question anybody that is solidly sold out to these ideas. That's not good.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that these Jesuits, a lot of people don't know they're actually considered a secret society.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a little clip here because Keith and I were part of a show once with a very well-versed, well-knowledged individual, James Bowen. He's very well-knowledged in Christian history, and he exposed the entire Jesuit secret society, which is available on our channel to watch if you're interested. But here's a clip of that where he kind of talks about the Jesuit oath that you mentioned.
Some of our viewers may have heard of the extreme Jesuit oath. It was part of the Library of Congress due to some political struggles that took place back in 1912 between Eugene Bonnewell and Thomas Butler, and this oath was brought to light. There have been many people that have claimed that it was a forgery based off of some forgeries from a fellow by the name of Robert Ware, and it was classed with another document called the Secreta Monita that was the secret instructions of the Jesuits. This second document right here was originally discovered in the Jesuits College at Paderborn, Westphalia, in a cupboard in the rector's room, and a second copy in the city of Prague in 1611. Now, Gretzer, one of the Jesuits, affirmed that the Monita was a forgery. And the problem is later on, there was a work found in the British Museum tucked away from 1596, 20 years before the alleged forgery in which the Secreta Monita is copied. And it was very scandalous in that it showed a lot of duplicitous means that they would use to advance their cause and obtain means for the order. And so it was very much a scandal for the order. And as well as this extreme oath, and I'm not going to read all of this here because I'm just going to challenge the viewer to maybe take a look and see what kind of means they would promote. But it was very violent and talking about attacking and killing people, and
It's pretty gory.
Yeah, it might be too hot for YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, the one line really kind of stands out there in the middle. It's like, do furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war secretly or openly against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to.
The first time I ever heard of the Jesuits was actually when I read the book, The Great Controversy, which is really just a historical piece. Like, this author, Ellen White, she quotes historians. This is not her own agenda or ideas or anything. And many people have been blessed by it, including me. And that's where these historians describe as the Jesuits were put into place to counter the Reformation that was happening, right? The Martin Luthers, the Zwinglies, the John Wesley, all those people who stepped up and shared the truth of whatever the Roman Catholic Church is teaching is not biblical. And the Jesuits came in and secretly mingled with the Protestants, joined their churches to then counter it.
I just want to mention the middle of that. I mean, if somebody is willing to take babies and smash their heads against the wall, like
cut open pregnant women,
you know what I mean? And it's like, traditionally, we as humans, right? Women, children, off limits, like, save them, let the men fight, basically. But that's straight evil.
Yeah.
I think this is terribly evil.
Yeah. And then to think that this guy, who was a Jesuit, was in charge of the pandemic. Now, there was a lot of controversial things happening during the pandemic. And I remember I put out a little clip about the coronavirus at the time with some behind the scenes stuff that wasn't really out in the mainstream media. Again, remember that this guy was in charge of that. Take a look at this.
Yeah, Jessica, the doctors say that they have compiled their own data of cases here in Kern County and used their research from the cases here to cross-reference them with numbers across the nation and really across the globe. They say that data shows that healthy people don't need to shelter in place anymore. And of course, that's going against what a lot of health experts have been telling us so far.
I say, do we need to still shelter in place? Our answer is emphatically no. Do we need businesses to be shut down? Emphatically, no.
They have tested 5,213 patients within the county for the. That makes up for over half of all testing done here. They say their data and research qualifies their statement.
Is the flu less dangerous than? Let's look at the death rates. No, it's not. They're similar in prevalence and in death rate. So we are saying that our response now that we know the facts, it's time to get back to work.
The White House task force expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says otherwise, with national research showing cases to be over 10 times as lethal than the flu. But Fauci's decades of experience as an immunologist and physician holds no weight in the eyes of Erickson and Masihi.
We're actually seeing the patients. Dr. Fauci hasn't seen a patient for 20 years.
Reporting the disease, Erickson claims, is being forced onto healthcare professionals.
ER doctors now, my friends that I talk to say, it's interesting, when I'm writing up my death report, I'm being pressured to add. Why is that? Why are we being pressured to add to maybe increase the numbers and make it look a little bit worse than it is? I think so.
According to Erickson, there is something much larger at play here.
This is not about science, and it's not even about. When they use the word safe, if you listen to the word safe, that's about controlling you. So when I talk to all my ER doctors who work in a hospital, no stake in the game, same opinion.
Doctor, I want to read for our viewers what the CDC says in part about how to count deaths relating to that last issue we just raised. In cases where a definite diagnosis of COVID cannot be made but is suspected or likely, like the circumstances are compelling with a reasonable degree of certainty, it is acceptable to report on a death certificate as probable or presumed. So, doctor, what's the problem with that?
Well, in short, it's ridiculous. I spent some time earlier today just going through the CDC's manual on how to complete death certificates and the parts that were specifically written for physicians. And in that manual, it talks of precision and specificity, and that's what we were trained with. The determination of the cause of death is a big deal. It has impact on estate planning. It has impact on future generations. And the idea that we're going to allow people to massage and sort of game the numbers is a real issue, because we're going to undermine the trust. And right now, as we see politicians doing things that aren't necessarily motivated on fact and science, the public's their trust in politicians is already wearing thin.
What do you say to those folks who are making the claim without really any evidence that these deaths are being padded, that the number of deaths are being padded?
You will always have conspiracy theories when you have very challenging public health crises. They are nothing but distractions.
Conspiracy theories, doctor? So you're engaging in conspiracy theories. What do you say to Dr. Fauci tonight?
Well, I would remind him that anytime healthcare intersects with dollars, it gets awkward. Right now, Medicare has determined that if you have admission to the hospital, you'll get paid $13,000. If that COVID-19 patient goes on a ventilator, you get $39,000, 3 times as much. Nobody can tell me after 35 years in the world of medicine that sometimes those kinds of things impact on what we do.
So I find this really interesting, and I want to make sure we have a balanced look at this. What I don't want to do is just say, oh, well, there was no issue with it at all. I know personally people who have died from
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to just say downplay, but it is interesting that some of these things were happening and that some of these physicians were speaking up and were saying, like, why, if you're healthy, do you have to be, I think quarantined?
Yeah. If I'm in that position, I try to put myself in other people's shoes. 'Cause like you said, I know people, I talked to doctors at our church, and they were treating patients, and they were like, yeah, it's a real disease. We're seeing real patients. Mm-hmm. Our hospitals are full with these cases, and we can't take on any more. Like, they're full. We're putting them in other wings. So there's that. The other thing is, I'm trying to think, if I'm a doctor and I'm at least on the front end, on the very beginning, if I'm reacting to this, I'm probably going to overreact. I'm going to go way beyond the normal and probably go to freak out mode, because you don't want anything to happen to people. Mm-hmm. Like, if it's as serious as it sounds, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to go to the extreme. Mm-hmm. And so I get that. it's only later that you find out, okay, could we have reacted differently? But hindsight's 2020, right? Like you have knowledge, you have, I've even heard of it being treated with different medications, like people taking pills now.
Here's where I take issue with this kind of a topic. To me, a smoking gun is if we're really, as humans, interested in everybody else's well-being. And that's why you saw all these people like Fauci making these, distancing rules and wear a mask and all that. If you really cared about people like that and you were really setting things in play, why are you taking ivermectin off the shelf? Why are you taking things that has been around for eons? You can go down to Tractor Supply and buy this stuff. You can feed it to your animal. Nothing's wrong. And the fact that they remove all this stuff tells me you're not interested in my health.
The hard part I have with that is different people in medicine have different perspectives. I had people tell me that's straight up poison. You should never take that stuff.
Yeah. But
and they're doctors and I'm not. And so you're only able to take people at their word, right? People that you know. So it's kind of like, it comes down in large part to a trust issue, like the people around you. If you have one doctor that's like, yeah, it's completely fine. Another one's like, no, don't ever take that. You should never take that stuff for any reason. Who do you believe?
I would believe
that's where it's difficult.
Sure, I would believe something that's around for a long time and they were finding successful.
There's lots of medications out there for a long time. It doesn't mean they should have ever been used because big pharma will push medications.
But there is provable evidence that some of these things that they were suggesting were helpful in these situations. And when they remove that, they remove the videos, they start controlling the information that's put out there. Why would you not want to explore something that you think is helpful?
No, I think you should explore all the.
But they weren't.
Explore all the
options.
But
they weren't. They were taking people off of the internet. They were taking people and gagging them and shutting them up. When it's like, well, aren't we here to help each other? Like, please, if you've got something that's like going to help out this situation, let's talk about it. Put that on the table. They were unwilling to talk about it.
No, I get it.
So to me, that's a bit of a major suspect.
It's like the way I guess I'm trying to compartmentalize it in my mind. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt as much as possible. If you had the opinion that something was very harmful for people and you're like, think of your kid and your kid's like, no, I want to try this option. And you're like, no, that's bad for you. You shouldn't try that option. You're like, okay, whatever, do whatever. Cause it's probably going to work out okay. Or do you remove the option for them and say, no, you shouldn't do that? I'm not saying I trust everybody either, but at the end of the day, what I'm saying is it's become more politicized. And it's basically you're picking based on your worldview, not necessarily science in a lot of cases.
This is true. And I think that's why healthy discussion on all the sides of the fence is healthy.
It is.
I don't think removing or gagging you is helpful in this situation.
And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make with this video. I'm not saying it wasn't real. It was a real disease. People really died.
Yeah.
But what I find suspicious is that these doctors are saying, why are we asked to write something down as when we don't even know if that was the cause? Why are we receiving these higher price tags if we do that or if we give them a ventilator? That to me is suspicious.
Yeah. And hospitals are in business to make money.
But there was so many things during this experience that just were out of the norm. And I think that people panicked. I'm sure there was bad information on all sides of the fence. And to me, it was really sad that we did not rally together as humans and come up with the best option to help it. There was some options that were forced upon everybody else that to me was not helpful.
And one of them was the the beep beep, that one. And we'll go back to that later on, but we all remember how much of an effect it had on people. Now, we live in Tennessee. We are very fortunate to live in a state that's more Republican-leaning, meaning that we were having more freedom. But there were people in all kinds of major cities, countries like Australia, I believe it was either China or Singapore, where they were locked in their homes. They couldn't leave. Like you couldn't go grocery shopping. I'll even have at the end of this show a slide that shows you that I think it was like either UK or Australia or Canada or something. I think it was Canada, where they took a poll, said, so do you think if people are that they should be imprisoned? They said, yeah. up to 5 days.
I believe it. I was in Canada during COVID.
I
and
mean,
we couldn't go to restaurants. We couldn't go
Yeah, I know
to many
people
places.
say it was like bad here, but I don't think it was as bad here restriction wise as it was in other places.
Yeah.
Not near as
Yeah.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody
Israel,
ever
Canada.
forced me to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, I never felt like I was under these huge major restrictions.
It's easy to make this, I'm going to use this term, a bigger deal than what it actually is based on what
It
is
was
being
a big
shown.
deal.
It was a huge deal.
It was a big deal.
But we can, base our views on what is being shown to us. If the media is showing us something, or if small YouTube channels are showing us the total opposite, then you're going to choose a side, right? But numbers don't
You
lie.
are going to choose a side.
And then, claims that it's conspiracy theories and all that, and like, yes, you got to take care of yourself. You got to, live each day like that. But as long as, you're taking care of yourself, I guess that's what it is.
I think the respectful thing in the beginning, because we didn't know what it was. I mean, it was such a weird state. I remember the first time I went out of my house and to the grocery store or whatever like that. And you're just
It's like a ghost town.
yeah, it was weird. It was like you were fearful and cautious, and like, you see somebody in the aisle and they're not wearing a mask and you're just like, what are you doing?
Toilet paper ran out.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I think the respectful thing to do is to adhere to what the recommendations are in the beginning, right? But once stuff started really just getting weird, and then they started like removing content, and anybody that was searching out what do we do with this thing, I am not surprised that Fauci is a Jesuit.
Yeah,
and it makes
secret
me,
society.
Yeah, it makes me very questionable because if you really study into prophecy and you know the history, these people are deeply entrenched into world domination, if you would.
Yeah, there's a lack of trust. Doesn't mean necessarily though that everybody who's attended a school that's known to be a Jesuit school is a Jesuit either.
Correct.
You have to be fair to people.
You do, and I think there's lots of Catholics that go to Catholic school that
That's right.
are wonderful people. I don't think that at all. But I do question the man of sin.
It just means you have a higher level influence in that education. And of course, there are some people who do go to Jesuit schools and they are Jesuits. I mean, that's a reality.
So, with this in mind, right? Like, we know that Fauci was involved with this, Jesuit stuff, and he was the head of battling in our country. I thought to myself, well, what about this mpox? Because it's kind of like coming up. There's a global emergency now, and the news is saying this is not the next, but then people talking among each other are like, is it the next? Like, what's happening? It's spreading to multiple countries. I thought, well, who is in charge of that? So let's take a look. So this is from a couple years ago. I believe this is 2022. Politico says Biden's monkeypox advisor is trying to manage a virus when dodging the talk of Satanism. This is the guy, Dr. Dimitri Daskalakis. He was, from 2022 to 2024, the coordinator for National Mpox Response at the White House, assigned by Biden in 2022. As of 2024, he works at the CDC as the director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. So this is a pretty big name. Like, he is now the head of making sure people get vaccinated and for respiratory diseases, et cetera, et cetera. So, and he worked, to fight mpox previously when there was a bit of an uprise, which is now coming back again. So interesting that a lot of people are saying, why is this doctor who's been hired on by Biden wearing all of this satanic symbolisms? Let's take a look. So here, this is his Instagram post. He's wearing a pentagram t-shirt, another pentagram t-shirt, and the guy all the way on the right is his boyfriend or husband, one of those two. And another pentagram t-shirt, and a pentagram hat, and a pentagram tattoo. And he also is wearing a Ganesh t-shirt, which is one of the Hindu gods. So there's kind of an uproar about this particular individual, but I want to take a look at him a little bit closer. So let's check out some of these tattoos that he has. This right here, you see an eagle tattoo with warrior, and then what do you guys see on the bottom right?
It's like a death skull with a sort of a Mary sun flare or Jesus sun flare thingy over his head.
Yeah, so if you read his description, it says, Wild Eagle on, always awesome, Dimitri, next to one of my old Death Tarot cards from a while ago. So it's a tarot card.
Tarot card, okay.
And so this is a repost, actually. Dr. Dimitri reposted this from this tattoo artist that gave him the tattoo. And his name that he goes by as a tattoo artist is Caesar Bacchus. Do you guys remember? And this is some of his work, by the way, that this tattoo artist did.
So there's Pan. Pan's the devil.
Pan, yep. Pan is an occult symbol for the devil. There's a devil on the right.
We talked about Bacchus just a few weeks ago.
We did, yes.
During the Olympics, right?
Yes, we did. So
Bacchus was the guy that was the blue guy.
Was the blue? Yep. So Caesar obviously means that he is the emperor, right? That's what Caesar means. And Bacchus, so Aleister Crowley, he wrote a poem once called Hymn for Pan, which is the guy you see on the left. And in this hymn or poem, he writes that Bacchus is the devil. So this guy, this tattoo artist, is calling himself basically Emperor Devil, right? And this is a tattoo artist that this doctor is getting his tattoos from. And in fact, it's multiple because he said he did his tarot card and his eagle. I find it interesting if an eagle is just a bird, and this guy is known for doing all this like satanic stuff. If you go to his website, it's full of it. And an eagle has, nothing to do with anything. It's just an animal. Then why is this guy tattooing an eagle on him?
So this is a tattoo that's on him, or you just showing?
That's a different one, I think.
Okay.
But
on the doctor, or just
the doctor. The doctor has one of them like that. I don't know if this is the exact one the doctor has or not, but he does have that tarot card tattooed on his arm.
I just think it's very interesting that people are obsessed with death.
Yeah.
I mean, do people like death? Like it's the worst
trend.
thing that can happen to you. You know,
It's a trend. People just go for it.
That looks like a fun party.
So this is him and his boyfriend. His boyfriend's name is Michael McNeil, and here they're dressed up with horns on their head. And here is his boyfriend with these wings. Do you guys remember what kind of god has these kind of wings?
That's the guy that runs really fast.
Hermes.
Hermes. That's right. So here you see Hermes with his wings on his head. And so this is from Rochester Institute of Technology. They explain Hermes was also the messenger for and among the gods and the conductor of the dead to the underworld. Hermes is known as the god of the underworld. So this is the guy's boyfriend that's, getting involved with kind of the same dark stuff. Now, this is another one of his boyfriend, an upside down cross. Also, they make a tribute to Madonna. They went to one of her concerts where it looked like it was like a really big LGBTQ concert party.
She's always been into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, she does a lot of like crazy upside down crosses, crucifies herself on stage, all that kind of stuff. And then lastly here, this is also posted by Michael McNeil, this guy's boyfriend. Again, the bull's horn. So this is the kind of stuff that these guys are interested in. Now, this is Dr. Dimitri.
He's got a picture of what appears to be a kind of a Roman Catholic Jesus.
Mm-hmm. So he grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church. And I want to show you guys the tattoos he has on his body, besides the one that we just saw, the eagle and the tarot card, because this is really fascinating. Do you guys know what the symbol is that is on the
belt?
On
the Maltese cross.
Maltese cross.
Yeah. Do you guys know which entities use the Maltese cross? It's used by the
because in Malta they were like the military branch, so that's why a lot of these deep entrenched secret societies, they actually come from Malta. They were almost like if you can kind of think of them as like the secret police, if you would.
This one in particular is from the Freemasons, which I find very fascinating. You see the eagle and you see the Maltese cross, which he has tattooed on his body. Okay. I'm not making any statements here about him being a Freemason. I'm just showing you what's going on, what he's portraying, and people can make their own decision about what they think.
And these pictures are all publicly posted on his Instagram.
On his Instagram.
So it's not like we're digging for anything. He's open about all of this.
Yeah. So we did a documentary a while ago about The Chosen specifically. And what was most fascinating to me is that Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus, actually says that he is a Knights Templar, which is on par with a 33rd degree Freemason, and he has been knighted and has the Maltese cross.
Yeah. I don't think you join up with the club and immediately you're on top.
No, this is a long journey.
This is something that is an investment into a life of climbing that ladder.
Yeah. Let's take a look.
I'm wearing a mantle and a cross with a little crown on it, a knight's cross. 5 years ago, I was knighted by the order, the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem. I lost my mind there for a second. Essentially, the Knights Templar, which is what that is.
If you don't know who the Knights Templar is, look at the structure of Freemasonry. The Knights Templar is literally the top step. It is on par with a 33rd degree Freemason. In fact, you can't get any higher, well, at least any higher than they tell us you can get, than a 33rd degree Freemason or a Knights Templar.
So Blavatsky said that the modern versions of the Templars were actually inspired and influenced by the Jesuits to try to Christianize what the Templars actually believe. And of course, especially those flavors that are connected with Freemasonry.
Interesting. Very interesting, right? So again, I'm just saying he has this tattoo on his body, and he says it's a reference to how he grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church. I actually looked up something last night. There is this bishop who is Greek Orthodox, and he points out, this leader in the Greek Orthodox, this one, they're all Freemason. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting.
Well, now we come to Elpidophoros. Demetrius dies, and the new patriarch is Bartholomew. And his disciple is Elpidophoros, all in the direct line of Athenagoras. Because Elpidophoros comes to America, is he a Mason? Well, Athenagoras is a Mason, Demetrius is a Mason, Bartholomew is a Mason. So why would not Elpidophoros, a true disciple of his elders, be also a Mason? What happened lately indicates that yes, he read a book. And the book is written by probably a Greek. His name is Nicholas Laus. And he liked the book. Oh, yes. And he wrote an introduction to the Greek book on what? Noopolitik, or politics of the mind. It was written by this Nicholas Laus, who is a master Mason. I mean, he's in Masonry all the way up to his eyeballs.
Just a note, this doctor who is a Satanist has a tattoo of the same symbol that this other guy that plays Jesus carries with him all the time.
The Knights Templar.
That's a good point.
The one he was pointing out.
Right?
Yeah,
So we got a
cross.
Satanist and an actor for Jesus carrying the same symbol with them.
And Jonathan Rumi has openly stated that he's a Jesuit. You find out all about that in our documentary about The Chosen as well. Let's look at the next one. He also has this tattoo done by the same tattoo artist that calls himself Caesar Bacchus. Bacchus is a reference to the devil, and all his tattoos are only dark. So if the eagle has nothing to do with anything occult or dark, why would he do that if that's all the work and the only work he does?
He likes bird watching. That's
Yeah,
probably what
exactly,
it is, huh?
exactly. So what does the eagle mean? Well, I got this from the horse's mouth. Los Angeles Harbor Lodge. This is a Masonic lodge and event center. They say since the publication of Levi's book, and Levi is one of the authors of a book that I mentioned earlier in this article, the analysis has been virtually uniform. From weight to worth, almost every commentator following Levi has adopted the reading of the Hermit card as prudence and has seen in the Temperance, Strength, Hermit, and Justice cards as allusion to Freemasonry's four cardinal virtues: temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. It is now the universally accepted reading among the vast majority of tarot enthusiasts, Gabelin, Atalia, and Levi's Masonic hunches have now become tarot law, so to speak, and the influence of Freemasonry will forever be felt in the strange and fascinating world of the tarot. For anything less at this point just wouldn't seem prudent. They're saying there's a connection between tarot and Freemasonry, right? They're being intertwined. And this guy has a Freemasonry, a tarot card tattoo. So there's another tattoo on his arm, the skull with the fire. So does that mean anything? I mean, I just literally just searched this up on Google. It's not hard to find.
Is that Ghost Rider?
Yeah, almost looks like it, right?
Looks like it.
So the Freemasons have a statement called Memento Mori. One of the themes that Freemasonry emphasizes is Memento Mori, which means remember that you will die. This may sound morbid, but it is a reminder that we should always be mindful of our mortality and strive to live our lives with purpose and meaning. The idea of Memento Mori has been a common theme in art and literature throughout history. So this is also literally straight up from the Freemasons. And then I also say, it is a reminder that our time on Earth is limited and that we should make the most of every moment. In Freemasonry, this theme is woven into the teachings and rituals of the fraternity, reminding members to live a life of integrity, compassion, and service.
It's almost like you hear these kind of character traits that they're wanting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Integrity is a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, life of service, great thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so out of like kind of like one side of their mouth, they promote this like positive lifestyle. And then it's like you read the Jesuit oath, I'm going to smash your baby against the wall and break his head out. You know, it's like, what are you doing? Why do they have this kind of a thing? You know,
you're not going to come to people with, we're going to smash your baby's head against the wall and expect them to trust you. You have to come at them with integrity and service. Once you gain their trust, then, you know, after that, it's deception, right? And it's like the serpent when he comes to Eve.
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
Well,
yeah.
and I find it more even interesting and ironic if somebody who subscribes to Satanism, which is all why would you serve anyone? Why not, you know, why not call it servitude? Everyone's serving me or something. Yeah. Maybe that's what they're meaning by it. I don't know, but it's just fascinating to me that you hear these positive character traits, but they're so far from that.
Yeah, because I mean, Satanism, it's do what thou wilt to be the whole of the law. It is literally you have to find God within yourself. That's what any occultist believes.
Right, and they're not about temperance, right? They're about no fence.
Yeah,
like there's no line here. Just go as far as you want.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, from the Chosen documentary, this guy, right, is a Jesuit, and he is a Knights Templar. He admits it. And so that technically puts him on the 33rd degree Freemasonry step or level. And look at these rings that he has. Yeah. He has the same skull rings.
Scully, Maury, and Mary. That's Mary there, Our Lady of Guadalupe. So, dynamic duo, yeah?
Scully Maury?
Yeah.
And what does the Freemasons call it? Memento Mori?
Oh, interesting.
Right?
I know we kind of brought this out when we did this LED, but I just think the imagery here is just so crazy because as an actor, you have to dive into these parts. I mean, fully immerse yourself in these parts, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen lots of interviews with him, and, you know, it's probably a super heavy weight to play Jesus, right? You know, I don't want to get that wrong. And, you know, but here he is, the very symbol of death. Whereas so opposite of Jesus. Jesus is the very symbol of life, right? In him is the life and the resurrection, and you know all these. He's the creator God. There's so many positive things that he's not dark. He's not death. Why is the guy that's portraying Jesus running around with not one death symbol, two death symbols, and then also Mary, who is taking the place of Jesus?
Yeah. People may think like, oh, it's just acting. That's why he's pretending to be someone he's not. But you cannot serve two masters. You can't mix light and darkness.
You can't.
And
what fellowship does it have? Yeah.
Right. He tends to portray like a rock star Jesus, and then carries that over into his personal life, the same kind of imagery, which people associate. But Jesus did not seek the spotlight.
No.
He wasn't like, hey, everybody, look at me, look at me. Was not like that at all. In fact, he retreated many times to commune with his Father and be away from people, you know, to draw strength.
Have you seen him in interviews and noticed he wears the rings all the time?
Yeah.
He's wearing it in commercials. I mean, literally, he doesn't. It seems like he doesn't take these off.
Well, but that's the point I'm making. It's like if you look at these guys' tattoos that he has, like tattoos are, for some people that just go about and like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to get this stupid tattoo. But for some people, it's like you really pick what you want because it's on your body forever and you're making a statement. This guy, this doctor is always with his shirt off, always posing, showing off all of his tattoos, right? And so if Jonathan Rumi, who says he is this Knights Templar, 33rd degree Freemason, is constantly wearing those rings, making a public statement in their skulls, why is this other guy doing the same thing? Anyway, so let's move on to the next tattoo, his eagle, right? Okay, so we talked about the eagle. If this has no reason for being there, why is he going to an occult tattoo artist that only does occult stuff and he gets that tattoo? So the eagle, a lot of people have seen this. This is the logo of the Freemasons. It's the eagle with the crown, the triangle, etc.
You can see the 33rd at the top.
Yep, exactly. So, also, the Scottish Rite of the Freemasons, this is what they say. As Scottish Rite Freemasons, we display our pride in the fraternity by wearing Masonic symbols. By the square and compass, the double-headed eagle is a well-known symbol of the Scottish Rite. The double-headed eagle emblem is displayed by fellow brothers on rings, jewelry, clothing, and caps. And they probably should have added tattoo as well. So he's got these roses tattoos. He also got the snake tattoo, which, as we see in a little bit, even snakes are symbols of Freemasonry and occultism. And obviously we also know of the Bible describing Satan, Lucifer, as a serpent. Let's look at these roses. Here, this is straight from the horse's mouth. Briggs Masons, the Masonic rose. In Freemasonry, the rose is used for various ceremonies and rituals. The rose was sacred to the sun and Aurora. It signifies dawn, the light, and the renewal of life. In, again, the Scottish Rite, the rose is connected to some degrees. In the 4th degree, silence is one of the virtues espoused, and members are reminded of the white rose. In the 18th degree, the rose cross, or red cross, is referred to as the Knight Rose Cross. The cross used in the 18th degree is one in which all 4 limbs are of the same size to connote balance. So interesting. Right? The rose is being used in Freemasonry, and then they have specifically in the 18th degree, the Knight's Rose Cross. I find that pretty fascinating. And then also, we keep talking about the Scottish Rite. So what is this Scottish Rite? Because there's a couple of symbols that specifically are pointed out as being part of the Scottish Rite. So if you look on the left, this is written by Pete Normand Jr. He's a 33rd degree Freemason. This is what it says. The Supreme Council, 33rd degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, a Neo-Templar
Greek word for new
organization, represents the spiritual, if not the historic, survival of, again, the Knights Templar. And that is evident in its hierarchical structure, in the titles of its officers, and in its regalia. Demonstrative of its Templar character, the 6 highest and last degrees conferred by the Scottish Rite are all Knight Templar degrees, more than any other regular rite of the Freemasonry. So they're saying if you're part of Scottish Rite, then you're likely going to be a Knights Templar, right?
So if you're a Jesuit, you're Freemason as well?
If you look at Total Onslaught by Walter White, which I highly recommend you watch at home, we'll put a link in the description. He says that basically all these secret societies all fall under the Roman Catholic Church, which includes the Jesuits. So they're all kind of like one and the same.
And I believe in a few weeks we're going to have a show with Walter White
we
talking
are
about that
on
as
secret
well.
societies. You
I
want to say
think,
something?
yeah, the only thing I would say here is, again, I think it's important to emphasize that symbols are contextual. They're taking a rose, they're taking an eagle, and they're saying, well, in our context, these are what these things mean.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean if somebody has an eagle tattoo or a rose tattoo,
No.
they're automatically a Freemason and a Satanist. That's not how that works. It just means when you see all those things conglomerated together and they're using the same ones, I mean, clearly he has a bunch of occult things tattooed on him. So when you see those things, then it's like, okay, I see where his mind and his brain and his body and spiritual direction is all going.
Mm-hmm.
So personality points to...
If I start a company and I use an eagle for the logo, it doesn't mean I'm a Freemason.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought this up because we do hear this in our comment
A lot.
section a lot, and people are, finding symbols and things, and even like, we'll pause the button and have like, oh, he put his hand and his first finger up or whatever, and make a big deal about that. Whereas I would 100% agree with you. I think there are some people that those symbols and they're doing those hand gestures and they're these logos and stuff like this. And I want to just, for our audience sake, say it like this. If you take the Christian cross, which really means a lot to Christianity, right?
Mm-hmm.
To people that are in Christianity, like that's a symbol that reminds me
Sure.
of what my Savior did. When I see a rapper in Hollywood wearing that symbol, it doesn't automatically mean, oh, well, then you're protected by God because of that. So on both sides of the fence, you cannot take something that is a good symbol, so to say, and then give it to somebody who's straight up a cult, and it's going to save them. You know what I mean? It's like the symbol is contextual to that.
Nor does it mean they're a Christian.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Because this guy also was wearing some Christian crosses,
Right.
which is interesting.
And I think, to be fair, one could say isolated, like he just had the eagle tattoo. If he didn't have like a multitude of these other tattoos, we wouldn't be able to say that means anything.
Yeah. It'd be hard to make a point
It's
about
a
it.
conglomeration of things that go together that are pointing in a direction.
And again, I'm not saying blatantly like this guy's a Freemason. I'm just pointing out that these are occult symbols that are also connected to Freemasonry, and it's interesting that they all are combined on this individual.
But he's definitely dressing in occult clothing
Yes.
and going to occult parties.
Exactly.
And he's definitely into that.
I mean, how does that saying go? If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like
Yeah.
a duck,
it's probably a duck.
Well, the Bible says that by their fruits you shall know them.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is artwork that some individual did for him, and he posted on his own Instagram. Now, this is where
Interesting.
things get really interesting, okay? Let's take a look at some of these symbols. We got upside down crosses, we got pentagrams, we've got the snake, and you see the Roman numerals for 666. Got the upside down cross on the snake on the top as well.
I think that, in you pointing out that this was on his Instagram.
His Instagram.
Now, somebody else did this artwork and they
Yeah.
added a bunch of stuff. But when he's posting it, he's kind of like approving.
Yeah, he's putting a stamp of approval on it. I mean, if somebody made a design of me, I
Yeah.
have to fully agree with it and because I want people to perceive me that way or not.
Or don't post it.
Or don't post it.
post it, yeah.
Exactly. So if you post it, you're saying, yep, I agree with this. This is who I am, and I'm proud of it. Right? So let's look at the next one. Here are all of the roses with the thorns and everything like that we talked about. We got the all-seeing eye, which is specifically Freemasonry, right? Take a look at this. This is the Freemason all-seeing eye. We've got this particular triangle with the light rays. Now, I was thinking, what is that? I searched and searched. There's no such symbol that I could find that is specifically like this.
Really? Pink Floyd
Pink
album.
Floyd. Yeah,
Really?
that's what I thought too. I was about to search it
Pink
up.
Floyd album.
That's interesting.
It's a prism because the prism, you shine a white light into a prism and it splits it out into all the visible spectrum. But yeah, it was on the Pink Floyd.
Bending the light is what it's
bending
doing.
the light.
That's a fascinating idea.
So look at this. It's a literally the all-seeing eye is a prism with what?
Light
rays
rays.
of light. I mean, really? The sword. I was like, that has to be just like a random sword, like cool art, right? Where is the sword in this? Like, it's getting weirder and weirder. And then we've got this is from an official supply store of the Freemasons, and they have the Knights Templars also have their own sword.
Pretty fascinating that they put the cross through the crown. I've seen that in various churches.
Really?
Yeah. I've seen that symbol kind of like on pulpits and stuff like that in various different churches.
Take a look at this. There's that same symbol that's associated with the Knights Templars.
Maltese cross.
Okay, so what are these triangles? I'm sure you guys have seen those ones before.
Jared Leto has these on his body.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
And he's very like into this kind of occult stuff.
So this particular triangle is part of alchemy. So upside down, it means earth, and the right way up, it means
elemental
air.
witchcraft.
Exactly. It's elemental witchcraft. And in fact, this is considered, if you take all these pieces together, you make the pentagram again. So that's what he has in his body. Now, Spiritual Alchemy, this is a book written by a 33rd degree Freemason, Christopher Earnshaw. Check this out. So I read a little bit of the description. He basically connects alchemy with Freemasonry. And there were a couple of reviews on Amazon in the description, not like where you leave your own review, but it's like this would be part of the back of the book to say how they appreciate the book. Look at this. United Grant Lodge of England's magazine, FMT, December 2019. An interesting theory of how alchemy may have influenced early Freemasonry. And another one, the Scottish Rite, again, Journal, May-June 2020, by making the arcane subjects of alchemy, Rosicrucianism, and the topics of Renaissance education so lucid and accessible, Brother Earnshaw succeeds in providing master masons with valuable and additional light masonry. Besides, if you only the higher degrees are master masons, and the Knights Templar is one of them. And he has this on his body. So, the moon. What does the moon have anything to do with the occult and Freemasonry? This is another statement from the Freemasons where they explain how this is connected. In its culmination, the third degree is the transition through life and death in order to be reborn anew with an understanding of the spiritual world that has always been around us but now made visible. The moon here is key as Yesod leads to our understanding of becoming an emblem of the reflective nature we assume in this transformation. Like the moon, we reflect the light of the great architect, capturing what is impossible to see without becoming blinded by its radiance. I'm questioning who the great architect is that they're referring to in this situation. This is, of course, a metaphor, but no less appropriate to the change we undergo and the purposes we assume in becoming masters. Like the moon, each of us reflect the glory of the divine sun in phases, exerting our gravitational force over the tides of our interactions. This is from the book, The Master Mason.
Sounds very New Age.
Right?
It does, but do you see the counterfeit so like easily displayed? You are to be reflectors of Jesus, the actual sun, S-O-N, not an S-U-N. It's like the devil is like putting this idea of transformation. You need a change. All of us need to be reborn. You know, it's like Christianity, but leaving out God and then just twisting the facts ever so slightly. So it's not S-O-N, it's S-U-N. It's like, you know, the sun, moon, and the stars, worshiping the elements, the creation, instead of the creator themselves.
Exactly.
Well, what's interesting, if you look at the all-seeing eye, they consider that God is looking down over them, and he has like the sun rays reflecting and everything. In a little while, I'll show you this, but Freemasons worship Lucifer, right?
That's
and
right.
Lucifer actually means light bearer. They believe that he is the true God who deserves to have ownership over this world, and that he is going to give them that everlasting life where they can live however they want.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. There could be a Freemason watching on one of the lower levels and be like, I do not, I swore on the Bible. It's a very esoteric organization. And that's more than us saying that. And you can look it up, but you have a choice. You can swear on the Bible. You can swear in the Quran. You can swear on, what's the other book? I don't remember. There's 3 choices for initiation.
Yeah.
Kind of signifying there was like multiple paths. The Torah. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where the higher you get up, the more you find out what they really believe and really are wanting to do.
And like Babylon, you can kind of mix and blend all these things together. They're not saying you can't be that. It's just that, they'll often allow you to be in whatever faith world you're in and then blending it with this.
There's a lot of people that are probably Freemasons on the lower level, perfectly decent human beings, have no idea
they do community
what's
outreach
at the top. Yeah, they do good things. They're nice people. They're not at the top. But if you're in it, look it up.
I mean, it's not uncommon to see, Freemason halls in every big city, small city.
There's tons around here.
No windows, by the way.
Yeah, you can't look in. Interesting.
Weird.
Interesting. Yeah.
Easier to build that way, but
Okay, so he also has, what you see on his head, the Ankh, which is an Egyptian symbol. Again, why is this on a Freemason website if it has nothing to do with Freemasonry, right? Here they sell a Masonic lapel pin, the Egyptian Ankh, and this is from Bricks Masons.
$33, by the way.
33. Okay.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's funny.
That's funny. That's funny.
That is interesting.
And this is what they say. Elevate your Masonic attire with our exquisite Masonic lapel pin featuring the iconic Egyptian Ankh symbol. Crafted with precision and attention to detail, this lapel pin seamlessly blends ancient symbolism with Masonic heritage. The Ankh, a symbol of life and immortality, is beautifully showcased in this finely designed pin. Wear it proudly to convey your commitment to the timeless Masonic values and pursuit of enlightenment. This is his boyfriend again, Michael McNeil. Let's look at his tattoo. Do you guys think he has another tarot card on there? There was another picture where I could see what was actually written on it, and this is the one that he has, Lamat.
What exactly is that animal doing?
I have no idea.
Is it like tearing his skin down and he has clothing underneath?
It means something like getting higher up, letting go, accepting change.
Shedding something.
That's pretty much what this one means.
It looks like a jester.
The arms are like skin, the hands are skin, and then the leg is the same. So
It's the Fool.
The Fool, yeah, the Traveler.
Interesting.
So is this the Fool?
That's the Fool.
So in the occult world, the Fool is a representation of like a twisted Jesus.
Interesting. Very good point. Because this guy is also full of satanic symbolism.
It's in Grant Morrison, when we did the documentary on the replacement gods, he talked about the Fool and the tarot card of
the Hanging Man?
The Hanged Man, and some of these things that they were illustrating in their movies.
Yeah, that's what the Joker uses. In the Batman series.
For a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he's got some star tattoos. Now, a lot of kids draw stars like this. I don't want to say if your kid draws a star, that's inherently bad. This is just how we were all taught. So what is the meaning of the star? Again, it's being used in Freemasonry. You see the checkered floor and everything.
You see the pillars.
This is an official Freemasonry symbol, and that's the exact star that he has, just that you put some lines in between and it's a pentagram. But that's why this star is something I personally, let's say I'm doing some graphic design, I actually start avoiding this star because I'm like, this is way too close to your whole occult symbolism right here. And then, of course, he has the all-seeing eye, which is the most popular symbol or well-known symbol of the Freemasons, which we have already looked at. Now, this graphic designer that made that design for his husband, boyfriend, the Dr. Dimitri, earlier, did something for him as well with the exact same symbolism on his face.
And it has like a little crown of
thorns, barbed wire, you know, upside down cross on his forehead. It's pretty interesting. And here as well, I blurred whatever words were in between these shapes because they were pretty provocative. Some LGBTQ things that was over sexual. So I blurred that, but again, same things, right? So I had to blur this image because he had no clothing on, as you can see. But do you guys recognize this symbol? The circle with the dot in the middle that he's wearing?
In the martial arts, they had this kind of a circle with a dot in the middle. It was, I think, illustrating sun worship.
The symbol meant the sun god or the Tao. I was not sure how to tell my students. I mean, how do you tell close to 100 people that an art that we had been teaching at the school was actually invoking the spirit of the sun god? So the next week at my advanced class, the high rank class, I told my students I had a homework project for them. I wanted them to go home and do research on this symbol. So I drew the symbol on our chalkboard and I gave them their assignment. They looked in history books, they looked in Aztec and Mayan writings, they looked in Egyptian hieroglyphics, they looked in Greek, Roman. They looked in Babylonian. They also looked in tattoo books. They looked in books on Wicca and witchcraft. And each one of them, one after another, got up and presented the information they had found. And all of them, regardless of the source, found the same thing: the symbol of the sun god, or the Tao, or yin and yang, as it is known in the Chinese.
Yes, it is. So he's wearing this like pendulum thing and posing for this picture. And you see here in the top left,
Yep. There you go.
That's what it means.
So I think what this really is, I mean, how many cultures along civilization have always worshipped the sun? And it's almost like the devil knows, okay, Jesus being the Son of God, and he just introduced a total counterfeit to that thing. The sun giving you bright light and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And who does the sun represent in occult worship?
I mean, Lucifer is the light bearer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he'd be a star.
Yeah. So if you go back to Baal worship, like the original old school occult worship, the sun represents Lucifer. It represents Satan, who they worshipped. And this is entrenched in so many of today's cultures, societies. I mean, sun worship is still well alive today. And by the way, if you're interested, we have a whole video out on Baal worship. You should go check that out on our channel as well. So let's take a look at what our good friend of the show, Walter Veit, has to say about Freemasons and their symbols and what they mean, because he explains it so well. He has this, I don't know how many parts of his are in this series, but many episodes of, and it's called Total Onslaught.
It's like 36 DVDs.
Yes. It's free
really
on
detailed.
YouTube. You can watch it. It is fascinating what he uncovers, and let's take a look at what he says about Freemason symbols and some of the ones we have discussed already.
And then you have, of course, the figure of the Johannite, the St. John, the so-called one, who's really a symbol of something else. And it has the X, and then it has the cross. What do you notice about that cross? It's an upside-down cross, symbol of victory over Jesus Christ. If you go to the tracing boards, first degree, second degree, and so forth, there's a vast amount of symbolism here. Sun, moon, and stars. If you intercalate those, then you get hexagrams, pentagrams. The star is in the east. To the uninitiated, he's informed that it is the Star of Bethlehem. But there's, of course, a problem if you just think logically. The Magi came from the east and they walked towards the star. So where was the Star of Bethlehem? It was in the west. So this is another one that was in the east. And the Bible condemns the praying towards the east, right? Because that represented the sun god. And this star in the east is none other star than Sirius, the brightest star in the heaven, the luminary. The illuminated one is the symbol of Lucifer. The brightest planet in the heavens is which one? Is Venus. Venus, it's called the morning star. In the morning star name, it is masculine. As Venus, it has a female deity name, it's female. So you have the male and the female connotation right there. The black and white squares represent knowledge of good and evil. Now man has become as one of us, knowing good and evil. And so we can continue right through all the symbolism. We don't have time to go into it all. The two pillars, Yachim and Boaz, supposedly the temple of Solomon's temple's pillars, but these are representations of the ziggurat of Babylon. Serpents encircling rings and globes and issuing from globes are common in the Persian, Egyptian, Chinese, and Indian monuments. Vishnu is represented reposing on a coiled serpent, so many of their symbolism refers to the ancient deities. It sees forwards and backwards. Often these are half white, half black, representing the knowledge of light and the knowledge of darkness. And whether you worship the dark side or whether you worship the light side doesn't really make any difference. That is why it is interesting that the light side worshippers are known as Luciferians and the dark side are known as witches, wizards, and Satanists. And they are the best of friends because the deity is the same. It doesn't matter which vehicle you use to get to know him, it is the same deity.
That to me is fascinating. that you can worship the light or the dark. You can be a full-on Satanist like this Dr. Dimitri, or you can go toward the light, which is what Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen is doing, and doing this like Jesuit style worship.
Society of Jesus.
The Society of Jesus. But ultimately, they all worship the same deity. It's all Satan. He just has a different name. Lucifer or Satan. Which one do you want?
He really loves these opposites, polar opposites. It's like, the path to Jesus is this very narrow way, right? It's in the center. So he doesn't care if he can't get you off to one side. He's going to kick you off in the ditch on the other side. And it just seems to be his pattern of how he likes to work.
So this right here is an Instagram post of the Monster Cycle, which I noticed that Dr. Dimitri talks a lot about visiting the Monster Cycle. This is a spinning studio, like you go and do spinning classes in New York City. And I was like, oh, what does he hang out there? What is he doing? Well, it turns out it is owned by his husband or boyfriend, Michael. He owns that club. Now, I looked at that symbol and I'm like, what is that symbol? That cannot just be some random logo you put on there. Besides this spinning studio, the whole concept of it is that you go into the class and you actually watch on a big screen music videos from like Marilyn Manson, Lady Gaga, like all the dark stuff.
Okay.
So there's only two symbols that sort of look like this, that this logo seems to be a spin-off of. And they are either the papal cross, and there's the cross of Salem. The papal cross is obviously a reference to the Pope, and the cross of, and which, by the way, the Jesuits worship the Pope, obviously. They're Catholic. And then there's the cross of Salem, which you see on the left.
Do you remember the movie V for Vendetta? Mm-hmm. That was the symbol that the totalitarian government had. Kind of interesting.
Interesting. Now, the cross of Salem, you can see right here is a Masonic symbol. It is also called the Pontifical Cross because it is born before the Pope. It is a cross, the upright piece being crossed by the three lines, the upper and lower shorter than the middle one. It is the insignia of the Grand Master and Masters of the Grand Encampment of Knights Templar of the United States. Why do we keep seeing the Scottish Rite, the Knights Templars, all in this symbology that we keep seeing, right?
If it's slanted, it's the insignia of the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council.
I've seen that one.
Yeah, I have too.
Where it looks like the three that are slanted on it. Yeah, I remember that now.
And here's the thing. If this guy just so happened to pick a logo for his company, it has like three lines and a vertical line, I wouldn't pick on it. But because there's all of this combined, all of this together, and then why does your logo look similar to this stuff that you already have all this other symbolism with? That's
the building
interesting.
Looked like a church.
It did.
The building that he owned.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a couple of flags on the entrance. I forget what the blue and pink and white one is.
That's transgender. Okay. Yeah. So here, another post from Dr. Dimitri. He posts this saint, which is a Greek Orthodox saint. He's just talking about, hey, I'm having a birthday party going on. Come on out. But then he posts this saint. This saint has a name similar to him, so I don't know if he was named after him. But what's the symbol on the forehead? It's the same symbol.
Same symbol.
Yeah, and all the T's on all these letters are all double.
Yeah, true. I didn't even notice that.
We're going to have a table, so party like the Last Supper. Does that mean anything?
Oh, good catch.
Wow.
I didn't even read those words. But
and it, being very similar to the papal symbol, I wonder if it has anything to do with the Triple Crown.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
The Triple Crown?
Mm-hmm.
Lord of, it's the three realms. It's either heaven, earth, and then like beyond that, or if it's like the three heavens, because Paul talks about the three heavens. I don't know, but I think it has to do with three realms. In the Bible, when it talks about God being the creator, it's the Lord of heaven, the earth, and the fountains of waters. So that's how God claims his dominion on the earth, is over those things. So I think it might be similar to that.
So this saint is called Demetrius of Thessaloniki.
Thessalonian.
Mm-hmm. And so this is on a website that is selling these kind of imagery, and this is a Greek Orthodox website. So I was like, well, let me look into some more artwork of this particular saint. Check this out. Red horse, piercing, killing a king on a white horse. Does this remind you of anything?
Yeah, this is interesting.
Look at what the Bible says in Revelation 6, verse 4. Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword. So from my understanding, Keith, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is about the Christians that were, a time period where Christians were killed in the past, correct?
Yeah, the horses are actually most all the symbols in Revelation are covering different periods of history, whether it be specifically Christian history or military history or political history or whatever. And so yeah, the horses are covering a segment of Christian history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the white horse is the one when it goes and it's conquering and to conquer. It's that time period in history, brief time period, where the apostolic church was going and spreading the gospel early on. And then you get to the red horse and it's more of a, okay, now Christians are being persecuted and it's not a pleasant time for Christianity.
There's an end time application to that as well, right?
All of them have
the pale being pestilence, the black being death, the red being war, I think it was.
Yeah. Different people have looked at them different ways. But if you take a historicist approach, they're talking about different periods of basically church history.
Mm-hmm.
So what then does the white horse mean? Revelation 19, 11 through 16. Now I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judged and makes war. And his eyes were like a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. He had a name written that no one knew except himself. He was clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should strike the nations. And he himself will rule them with a rod of iron. He himself treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. And he has on his robe and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So this is Jesus. And so we have this image where this guy is sitting on a red horse, insinuating a time period from when Christians were killed, and he is killing a king. Jesus is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, sitting on a white horse. This is the image that he is referring to, this Dr. Dimitri, in his birthday celebration, and then he says, a party like it's the Last Supper. Mm-hmm. That's pretty blasphemous, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So I looked at this website, the Greek Orthodox website that was selling this image, and I looked at, what is that emblem that's on that picture? That's
seen that before.
Yes. Well, guess what? Here's the website right here. The 3 generations of handmade Orthodox church supplies, right? Well, guess what? These are 2 different logos representing 2 different entities. The left represents the Greek Orthodox Church logo, and the right represents the Freemasons. I thought it was pretty fascinating, and this is that
a lot
similar.
Of similarities.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they both have the sword, they both have the crown, they both have the 2 eagles with the heads. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, that's very fascinating, especially when I told you guys earlier that I ran into this video of this bishop, a high-end bishop, who was like, yes, this one, all these leaders in the Orthodox Church are Freemasons. And he even points out the history of when Freemasonry was introduced into the Orthodox Church. So what is the point of all of this, right? Like, why does this matter? Why do we have to talk about this? Guy or actually men, Fauci and Dr. Dimitri, in light of Bible prophecy and mpox and COVID, like, why does it matter who's actually in charge? So the Bible foretells that just before Jesus' second coming, there's going to be specific things that will be happening. Among them, there will be diseases. The Bible calls it pestilences. And this Jesus shared with his disciples as an announcement to say, this is the sign that I am coming soon and you're living in the last days. Matthew 24, 4-8 says, "And Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." Now, what's something else that's going to happen in the last days?
Force you to worship how they determine you should worship.
The mark of the beast. Now, I'm going to show you guys how this is connected to the whole COVID mpox situation. Revelation 13, 16-17 says, "He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." When we had the coronavirus, we had, I guess a good word is, you could say chaos. There was absolute chaos in the world. And out of that chaos, you had people being divided, right? You had a group of people that said, we don't want to get our job, and we had a group of people that said, what are you doing? We need the job. There was a lot of fear on both sides. And there was a lot of force, as we talked about earlier, right? Like, if you don't take this, then you're going to go, you're going to get arrested. You're going to go not be able to buy food anymore. No buy or sell, as the mark of the beast is saying. You will lose your job. And it was very interesting when we saw this happening, how much of similarities had to the mark of the beast. I'm not saying the mpox is the mark of the beast. That's not what I'm saying. But we see in philosophy and throughout history that when you take two opposing sides and push them together, out comes what these sides actually want, right? You push them towards your point of view. It's called the Hegelian dialect. Check this out.
Somebody will come up with a thesis, and that thesis invariably evokes an antithesis, that is, a theory that is in polar tension to it. So now the progress of philosophical development is stifled, and there's a blockade here because you can't get past this tension until somebody comes along and resolves the problem by creating what is called a synthesis. That synthesis becomes the new thesis, and invariably, that thesis provokes what? Another antithesis. Now, then what happens is that this creates a roadblock for a certain period of time until somebody else comes along and takes ideas from both of these sides, works them out together, and creates another synthesis.
So, have you guys heard of this concept before?
Yeah, I remember Walter Weith was always talking about this.
Do you guys see how during the coronavirus, this really happened? This really played out? And so if you keep having these opposite sides, you keep pushing them toward the middle, and you keep going, eventually the ruling powers will get the people where they want them to be. In fact, the Bible talks about in these last days, just before Jesus' second coming as well, in Luke 21, verses 25-28, that people will have fear. And there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them from fear, and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. So there's a lot of this anxiety happening in the last days. It talks about there's going to be diseases, going to be pestilences. It talks about, the mark of the beast. How do you guys think that the whole world can receive a mark in their forehead or in their hand and they'll be forced worship unless you create chaos first? If the world's at peace, no one's going to be caring about that. They're all going to be like, yeah, whatever. Get lost,
In our day and age, I remember when 9/11 happened, there were some things that happened after that. I mean, we used to be able to go to an airport and you could just walk right up to the gate. You'd wait for the people to come off. Once that happened, you couldn't go into the airport unless you had a ticket. And everybody accepts it and they move on. And so like you have these huge monumental tragic situations and then the society adjusts. And so they understand this is how it works. Cause something big, it'll adjust. Cause something big, it'll adjust. And then they can push you in whatever direction they want.
Yeah. And so I truly believe, as we look at the Bible, as we look at diseases will be part of the last days, that this is one of Satan's methods to push people into one corner, to change society so that he can get them to where he needs to be, so that when there's all of this chaos and people are fearful and they're scared, just like with 9/11, he can change laws, he can change people's mindsets, and he can pin people against each other. Because that's part of the mark of the beast. There's going to be a small group of people who will be faithful, who will be keeping God's commandments, God's seal. And if you're interested, we have a whole video on what the beast power and the mark of the beast is. But there's the majority that's going to attack those people. You cannot get that unless you've trained society to get to that point. And how do you do that? You create chaos. And we see it over and over again. The Bible talks about diseases and pestilences. We had COVID. And now we have Mpox. Maybe Mpox doesn't go all around the world, even though now it's considered a global emergency. But it's doing enough in enough societies in other places of the world where those people are being pushed and pushed and pushed. So, final little video here. This is also part of the video that we put out earlier with LED, our other program on our YouTube channel. And when you think about the mark of the beast, right? Like no buy or sell, you're probably going to have to track people. Check this out.
You can have a virus where people feel well enough while they're infectious that they get on a plane or they go to a market. The source of the virus could be a natural epidemic like Ebola, or it could be bioterrorism. We have the benefits of all the science and technology that we talk about here. We've got cell phones to get information from the public and get information out to them. We have satellite maps where we can see where people are and where they're moving.
To identify contagion risks, China relies upon its vast surveillance infrastructure, which includes security cameras equipped with facial recognition software and a social credit system that tracks all citizens' behavior. In South Korea, the government uses cell phone location data, video surveillance, and credit card records to monitor activity. And if a citizen tests positive, an emergency alert is sent out that includes their last name and a detailed record of their everyday travel. An app monitors quarantined individuals to make sure they don't leave home. In mid-May, Google and Apple plan to release a tool through an update to their operating systems that uses Bluetooth signals to log when a user's smartphone comes into close contact with another user's phone. Then, if someone tests positive for coronavirus, they'll use an app to share that information, and their phone will send out an alert to all the other users it's come in close proximity to.
So technology is really at the point where if you want to have a mark of the beast and you want to make sure you track people, right? The mark of the beast says, the Bible says, when you receive the mark, or if you don't receive the mark, you will be killed.
Yeah.
How do they know where you are?
Yeah. One of the easiest things to do is probably, tie in there your basic necessities, food, water, all those things. If you don't have access to those things, you'll be surprised what people will be capable of doing because they want those things.
Yep.
And so, this is the part where I truly honestly believe like now is the time to build your relationship with Jesus, and now is the time to put your utter trust in God, because he says your bread will not fail and your water will not fail. Like he will take care of us.
And this was pushed even more, and the technologies came about even more and were accepted by society because of pestilences, diseases, which is what Matthew 24 talks about. Last one. No buy or sell. Did this happen during the coronavirus? Yes, it did.
Well, Kroger is cutting some benefits to those who have not received their
Unvaccinated workers will no longer receive up to 2 weeks' pay for emergency leave if they become infected.
And then, of course, we have the article here. This is in Canada. More than 1 in 4 Canadians support jail time for the poll fines. That's scary.
What I find interesting, traditionally, vaccinations were to help in certain area. You get a polio and you don't really have polio, right? It's supposed to solve that. This was something that was kind of sold that it wasn't going to just take the thing away. It would just lessen your what you were feeling or experiencing, right? It wasn't to do away with that thing. I mean, they all said you could still get, you have a and you can still get.
Well, it's like the flu.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been accepted for years. You could, just because you get the flu doesn't mean that you wouldn't get the flu.
Right.
Because it was based on, the flu strains are based on old strains. And so it only works if you've had multiple flu shots over many years where your body's seen strain after strain after strain after strain, where you're going to become probably more resistant. But it's never for the one that's current. It's always from like last year or something like that.
But that just really begs the question is like, what's the purpose of taking it?
It's odds, because it's your body has the ability to build up antibodies. You're kind of playing an odds game, you know, your chances are better. So it's like, you could make the same argument and be like, well, why should I, well, if I'm going to still get sick if I eat sugar or not, well, then I should just eat sugar. Well, no, you should cut your sugar off, because the odds are the less sugar you intake, the more healthy you're going to be, the less likely to sickness and disease you'll get, right? So it's not about necessarily like, well, if it doesn't do any good, it can do some good for some people, but yeah, it's kind of similar in that regard where, yeah, it doesn't mean you couldn't get it, but flu's been the same way for it's in my whole life. But I'm not been one that's got a flu vaccine. Like, I've never been in the habit of getting a flu vaccine.
And when people get pressured, then that's when it happens, right? Like I wasn't living in Canada when it happened, and I had friends who decided to take the just because they wanted to go out and eat in restaurants whenever they wanted. That was literally their argument. It's like, oh man, I'm
they didn't want to be restricted.
I want to go out and eat. Yeah, so pressure also works.
Social pressure is a big deal.
In all aspects of life, really.
And so MPOGs, who are at the helm of who are supposed to fight these diseases, it's a guy who's associated with the Jesuits, and it's a guy who is a Satanist, or at least has satanic symbolism everywhere that also has connections to the Freemason symbols. So this is very fascinating. I think this is very interesting that these are the people who are supposed to keep us safe, but then we see in the Bible that this was going to happen. And then if we look at how it played out, it almost seems to me like a test run for the mark of the beast. How far can we push people in our corner in the right direction so that we can do whatever we want, right? Like, this is what I was observing during the, and I'm not saying anyone who got the did something wrong. I got the, I currently wish I hadn't, but I did get it at the time. It was, I prayed about it. I talked to physicians about it, and I made that decision. So I'm not speaking against anybody who got this. But it is interesting that they're really trying to push people in a certain direction, and that it seems like this is pushing control more and more and more, to the point where when the world is ripe for the mark of the beast, you got the majority following you.
Yeah. I think it's really hard to get people to sign up, especially with all the different varieties of faiths that are out there. I mean, how are you going to corral all those people? If Revelation really does talk about, those that receive the mark and it's about worship, how are you going to get all these varieties of people to funnel into that idea?
I mean, if you're cutting off people's ability to get food and water, their basic necessities, they'll fall in line real fast.
Absolutely. But if you do that in some sort of kind of like scientific realm or whatever like that, it's a whole lot easier for you to write the laws, create the system that will eventually get applied to the religious aspect. But we're seeing it play out, I think, in the scientific community, because all those things are getting placed in order. And then we're going to see it in a religious setting.
And I find it interesting that now this guy on the right, he's no longer associated with the MPOX, but he is the head of one of these departments of the CDC. It has to do with. So that's a big name high up with this kind of philosophy of life. I'm just saying. Mm-hmm. So, interesting conversation, interesting deep dive. If you guys at home think that this is interesting and these symbols are there for a reason and everything seems to kind of work together, leave a comment below. And if you think, nah, this is just symbols because they just like these kind of symbols, they like these kind of tattoos, it has nothing to do with anything, we're off the hook. Leave a comment too, because we want to hear from you whether you are agreeing with us or not. Other than that, we are going to be back next week with another LED Live. Also, check out our show we did with Professor Walter Veit, and we've got more coming. We've got one coming as well with the Freemasons and how he exposes all of these secret societies. Very interesting. If you want to see his Total Onslaught series, you can just type it into YouTube and find it for yourself. Fascinating stuff. I think it's going to change your life and rock your world when you watch his series. So make sure you check that out, and we'll see you next week.
Do you have questions about the Bible that you've been struggling to find the answers for? Video Bible Study, or VBS for short, is a YouTube channel that answers your Bible questions in 5 minutes or less. Check out these easy to understand, comprehensive videos talking about everything from what happens when you die to why does God allow suffering. Make it your goal to deepen your relationship with Christ this year and subscribe to Video Bible Study on YouTube to help you along your journey.